This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to Late Boomers. Today we have as our special guest, Melanie Lutz, filmmaker, author, and love activist. Her multi-platform media, Mel's Loveland, is dedicated to changing the world's narrative and bringing peace and love to all. Her upcoming documentary series, Mel's Loveland, What If All Our Thoughts Were Loving, offers a season of love and asks what the world would be like if we let love lead the way.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Mel has also produced such films as Mel's Loveland, All Systems Love, and Jonna's Body, Please Hold. She has written a number of inspirational books, Mel's Loveland, 100 Days of Love Meditations, Vanessa by the Sea, Love Always Remains the Answer, and many others. Welcome, Mel.
Great to be here and to have this season of love, and also all of the reasons that we're here together to just spread love and to also connect to our inner power, wisdom, to share this time together and really just be open to the possibilities that are available and the electricity of our connection today. So I'm super grateful, obviously, to be with the three of you. The power of the three is one of my favorites. I have two brothers, so we're always in our triangle of power.
Nice. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to spread love and uplift others? And how did you come to loving everyone?
My background is pretty unique. I grew up in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we had a big Sinatra Rat Pack, uh, you know, father and brothers, and so we were really about the music and about connecting as family, and having a kind of a swinging, happening background. And I found myself inspired, and I wanted to come out to Los Angeles and create some stars, if you will, some Rat Pack and stars. So that's what brought me out to Los Angeles. And then as far as, like, coming to loving everyone, we all hit that point where either we lose someone that we love dearly, there's a grief, there's a breaking open of a life that you thought was the life you wanted, and perhaps it wasn't, for me, actually what I did want. So I had this opportunity to, like, sit with, what does it mean to put yourself into the equation? And I started hearing a song called, it's part of the Jungle Book, The Bare Necessities. So it was, look for the bare Mel-cessities. So it was somehow my consciousness was putting Mel into the equation. And so I was thinking about what it meant to be a part of the life that I'd created that was so beautiful, and where I had really, just been supporting other people. And the beauty of the put Mel into the conversation, I had been reading Joan Didion's The Year of Living Miraculously, which she wrote after her husband passed away. And I was thinking, how could I write a written self-portrait about who and what I am when you really don't know because you've been serving other people? And so that's where I f I put myself out there with the bare necessities, the naked truth, a year of stepping into being loving, trying to connect with people, trying to be vulnerable for a year, trying to open up to the idea, "Wow, this is really what I need. These are my needs." and then allowing people to meet them awkwardly at first, and the year really evolved into this beautiful written self-portrait.
Oh, I love that. Well, how do you recommend we all practice loving others in a world where love isn't always paramount?
There's a simple practice of, uh, my dad would sit us down at the table and like, "What have you done for someone today?" And we would go, I was able to, like, help out our neighbor, she was struggling with her, garbage cans, and so, like, I jumped out there and, like, carried them up for her. And so that was the inspiration for we are our neighbors. So as we do for them, we're really doing for ourselves. And so we were ingrained with that from childhood, and it just, when I started to think, like, what is it that I'm missing from this lifestyle in Los Angeles? And it was, what am I doing for other people? How am I being a contributory factor for a better timeline? How are the stories I'm telling becoming, uh, a shifted perspective? So it really just started to, like, make sense that if you shift your perception, if you shift your point of view, if you stop telling stories, like, the only power we have to change, is to change the story that we're telling ourselves, because we give everything all the meaning it has. So it was really a powerful thing to go, "Okay, what are the stories that bring me alive? And then what are the stories that are, like, about what I love? And then how do I turn that into a little bit of a suggestion, for your consideration?" We're in the Oscar season, so it's like we're just considering that there's a possibility you might see it differently. And then it just, I started connecting to other movement people and other activists and other individuals that were organizing, not talking about what they didn't like about the world, but literally organizing for the world that they wanted to see, and building bridges, and, so it was really inspiring, and I thought, "How did we get into this timeline where things aren't loving?" And then it just struck me that we focused on things that were anxiety producing, and we told stories that were anxiety producing, and, for myself, I hit the point. I was working at FX, Studios on a bunch of the network shows, and they were murder shows. I mean, we got into that, and then how do we explode someone's head, you know, to a point where it's completely shocking visually and metaphorically, I guess, and I just stopped. And then we shifted
Um,
into, like, where can we get stories that really are about different points of view that aren't this narrative of propaganda, or, somehow the world is being saved by detectives who are solving these mysteries? And where is it that we can uplift that story? And it just very quickly became clear that there were people in the world that had done things that were their love, their passion. The guy who started Patagonia, he loved the adventure of the world's, travels, and being on that mountain, that he was like, "Maybe I can't make it, it's too windy today," but then he did it, and he lit up, because that's the adventure that he was here to provide. And when he made his products, to be in the Patagonia system, it was like people could adventure. People could connect to that I'm in uncharted adventure of land and sea and air. And, when he, moved into his "What is it all about?" kind of thing, "How am I gonna help save the world?" He moved his business into a collective care and a community governance, giving the company back to its employees who had served him well. And so those are the people that we started curating to tell the story about, we're here to connect to the land. We're here to really be in an ecosystem. I call it all systems love because it doesn't have a definition. It's just I know that our systems need to be more loving, and, that's the aspect, and we started telling stories that were about what people loved, and so I'm in the midst of curating what I guess I'm calling a content hub or a multimedia universe, if you will, that has people who are telling the stories of what they love, that are really shifting the narratives. We're uplifting cinematographers that are women and integrating. So let's say there's 5 women in the Cinema Society of Cinematographers. If you look at the big wall of the men who have lensed every film for 100 years, there's 5 women who are part of that operation. And so for the past 4 years, I've been, like, really actively recruiting and integrating different different peepers into, like, telling stories.
Oh,
So
I love that
that's
because my daughter's a cinematographer, so I really
wow.
appreciate that. My
Oh,
next
beautiful.
question, though, I wanted to ask you, what is biophilia and how does aligning ourselves with this point of view help each of us as individuals?
Beautiful question. Biophilia is the love of all living things. It is our interconnectedness with everything that we see, interact with, and touch. And it has been something we've been singing about. One of the storytelling techniques that we've used is this concept of community garden. It's called biophilia ecological renaissance work. And so it has been integrated with indigenous practices of connecting to what the earth's soil needs because we've lost 80% of the nutrients in our soil density on the planet. It's a pretty bad statistic as you get into the numbers of things, but there are collectives who are actively working with um, I don't want to call it art. You have to do what you're here to do. I'm an artist. I like to sing. I'm a terrible singer in some ways. Like I can carry the song, but I can't hit tones. And if if I'm in a choir, which is what we're doing, I don't necessarily sing those notes with harmony. So I've learned that through the process of biophilia. But biophilia is the love of all living things, and it's how we create ecosystems that uplift us and allow the environments to thrive, that allow health and wellness, a foundational health and wellness to really raise the roof, as I say.
That's
Mm.
great. That's great. I wanted to say that's food for thought. That's kind of a horrible pun. But anyway,
But it is food for thought, and that's the joy of, you know, changing your thoughts because everything has this, it's like popcorn. It's like popping.
that sounds good. I'm waiting for the sound. How did you come to the question, what if all our thoughts are loving, as a
Oh,
starting
man.
point for the original documentary series that you did, Mel's Loveland?
Yeah, I'm in post-production with this series now. The question, I think, was the universal question of how did we get here? When we are loving, when we've had wonderful lives, when we've told beautiful stories, how did we get here? Why are we in a timeline where there's fear that seems to be people would rather take their lives? I mean, suicide rates going up, things, mental health issues impacting drug addiction, trying to check out of our life in some ways. Those numbers have been rising, unfortunately, over the past 40 years or whatever, but specifically in the last 10 years. And so it really became important to check in with your connection to yourself, to have the whole picture be represented. And it was like, what if all of our thoughts were loving? What if we were able to shift our thinking systems, our storytelling systems, to this. Let's think about it with love. And one of my key marching principles through this process of building out a love network folks that are committed to the storytelling point of view, and it is holistic. There is dark shadow work that goes on with loving. As you know, anybody who's been in a relationship knows that the shadow, the wholeness piece comes out in relationship, in loving relationship, in our deepest, most personal relationships, in our family relationships. It's all up. So I'm just advocating, if you're not thinking with love, what you're thinking is not true. And so you just start the thought process and go, am I thinking with love right now? Then you're like, okay. And then you shift to, gosh, if I'm not thinking with love, this isn't true. This is just a scenario that I'm creating with my thinking. So that's kind of the heads up.
Interesting. What would you say is the best part of your work?
Seeing The I mean, it's more an experience. I know Eckhart Tolle talks about the feelingness of our existence, so we're not really here to think. Thinking is an add-on to the human existence, but really we're here to engage in this feelingness, our intuitive, our liminal resources to know in this moment, gosh, I'm here to talk to you and I don't know what I'm supposed to say. We have some questions to kind of go from, but I'm hoping that I'm present enough. I'm feeling into this is going to air on Valentine's Day. I mean, perhaps someone needs to hear, let's consider the possibilities today that we're going to be loving today and see how we go.
And 365 days a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, every day the loving everyone has opened up doors and beautiful. I know I'm like a Jerry Herman fan, I'm a musical theater fan, but it's like open a new window every day is like something I grew up singing, and that's how this loving everyone kind of feels. You're just opening up some new windows, you're considering some new options for yourself, and you're saying, "You know what? Do I wanna engage in some reality I'm creating that actually isn't benefiting me or my family?"
Well, Melanie, what uplifts and what detracts from connection as far as people who think negatively versus those with loving feelings?
I mean, this is the core question. How do we handle our depression and our natural sense of being in the world when we've got grief? And when we're really just like, today isn't the day to do that. Devil, get you behind me, number one. Obviously, we talk about that all the time, but it's truly just working with our natural rhythms and connecting to this, like I said, a biophilia. I may have the darkest day I've ever had, but we're in camellia season. So I go out for a walk and I say to myself, I could barely get myself out the door, but I'm conditioned to look for what is light and what is loving. And if you're not doing some form of napping, the nap ministry is one of the things I've been promoting with the love Trisha
Nap
Hershey.
ministry. I've never heard of this.
It's anti-capitalism work, it's trauma-informed work, but if you think there's something that you have to do, you say to yourself, "It's time for a nap," and then you take a nap. The nap ministry. You absolutely work actively and decode this idea that you have to do anything. And so the nap ministry brings out this beautiful interaction with your actual energy fields. And so for me, if I'm stressed, like there's several deals that are on the table for different things. And, you could say yes or you could say no. And there's a part of you that says, gosh, I may be seen in a particular way if I take this road, if I close this deal. Do I need it for health, wealth? Is it part of that system that enriches my life, or is it something I'm doing? So you just run through those equations and work on them, and then you make choices that ultimately are restful, are nourishing, meet your needs, and you don't feel as though you're out of your body um, which sometimes happens in the entertainment business. I mean, there's people who are trying to do something that may or may not have any um, impact that is loving. And so you're just kind of
Exactly.
it's become a an ongoing, like, equation of how your life, if I add flowers and walks and a couple hugs from the dogs and some sisterhood time at the beach, having some drinks and snacks, that I'm gonna be happy that my equation for the week is gonna be more loving, my decision making is gonna be better because I've had a chance to process in a loving community. So it's truly been, that's the are you doing things that are connecting yourself to your needs? And how restful and peaceful is the outcome of that opportunity. So,
Wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about Mel's Loveland's heart art, heart art cards and
oh
letters? Heart
gosh,
art.
thank you for asking. My dad passed away, like 5 years ago, and, my mom and him had been married for probably 50 years. I'm saying it's like 63, but she never wanted to, like she kinda tried to keep the numbers down there, I don't know. My mom
It
had some
makes her older, but she doesn't realize how valuable that time is together. You
yeah, it
want
was.
you wanna showcase it, not hide it. No,
And
I feel.
she wasn't necessarily in her right mind there towards the
Oh,
end, so, but the beauty of spending that time, as you said, having those moments where maybe the physical health, like, my father was a bit of a Sicilian, a little bit of a gangstery kind of, gentleman who wanted to do things his way, and so he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. He, was like, "You know what? I'm good. I'm gonna check out," and so we all as a family decided to bring them to California and live and move them into Pasadena. And so we had this, like, very quirky 6 months with my father and my mom in a new location, beautiful location in Pasadena. I mean, Pasadena is one of the most gorgeous cities in the United States, I feel. I love it.
mhm.
And we had this grace-filled 6 months of just, my dad being my dad, but being sick as could be, but still fully in his, "This is my choice." And then he passed away, and I know it's a long story, but we had to find a place, for my mom who was grieving, who was stressed out, like, no I mean, she went into the hospital when my dad passed away because, just her entire system checked out. So we found a wonderful place. There's a Regency Park. There's a lovely system. There's like a small system of Pasadena senior care facilities and stuff. So we found a beautiful place. And first Valentine's Day, I was like, what can we do to support my mom? My friends came, like, so we decided to make 100, for whatever reason, that was the number, 100 days of love. And we had this beautiful experience of taking white roses and cards to the 100 seniors that were in this facility.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It
And you're
was so
continuing to do that, aren't you, with other
every
people?
year we've expanded, to different senior homes. My mom has now passed away as of, last year, but the so we've moved to different spaces, and it's, such a beautiful process. There's so much love in it. We have different reasons, I guess, for participating at the end of the day, but it's that, like, some of it's the work ahead for the 21st century is multi-generational. There is a young 8-year-olds who are literally empathic. They know how to connect to seniors. They know how to connect to what they love and how they share that love, and they want to do this wonderful work. And then each generation we include in this card making process. So we obviously have 80-year-olds making cards to, 8 to 11 is the youngest. And we just have kind of a party, and we just talk about stories. We talk about the love that we've shared with our loved ones and while we're making the cards. And it has been a beautiful tradition. We're now, like I said, 5. This will be the 6th year since my dad.
So
So
you're hand making them all together. You're hand making the cards. Sounds like in a
yeah,
group.
it's an art. Yeah, they're literally the blank canvas of the cardstock, 8.5 by 11. We just fold it in half, and then people do their story sometimes of the love that they shared with their person they're thinking about. And then when we deliver the cards, I have so many loving stories of people just breaking into memories of when they first met their husband, to sharing, like, in Pasadena, there was a like, there was folks that had moved here with their husband and created this beautiful life for themselves, and now their husband was gone and they're in this home, and so people weren't asking them stories about their relationships with their partners, so it was really just
Oh,
super
that's
deep.
beautiful.
Yeah, and so we just continue that feeling, and obviously COVID took us to different we couldn't go into we couldn't get past the lobby during COVID, but we found ways to, like, contribute to people that were in need. And, even Alex Trebek, when he passed over, some of his donation, for the unhoused, the tiny home space in North Hollywood, we were able to add that into our so it extended to families that didn't have homes, and so people did do some cards for that connection.
That's so
Beautiful.
uplifting. Thank you. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
being for more uplifting of our audience, tell us about your book, Mel's Loveland: 100 Days of Love Meditations. And if you
Mhm.
could, read us a day or two from your book, or if from memory.
Oh, so from memory for sure, but that was after crying all the tears I had to cry, from breaking up with I had a divorce I went through. Everybody has the thing that they go through. But, after crying all the tears about whatever you cry about, like lost love, or, and then you come to the love, all the love was real, and the relationship itself was gorgeous and beautiful, and we shared so many memories around the world. And you go like, "Okay, what's it all about?" And then I heard a voice that was like, "Share the gifts that you've been given." And I thought to myself, I have been given so many gifts from my sisters, like my girlfriends, and who showed up in so many different ways. And so I wrote this, like, thing, called "I Am a Magnificent Woman," which was a connection to the ancestral, lineage going all the way back and I know some people do past life stuff. And when I moved to town, there was there was this psychic network. There were people like, Kenny Kingston, who talked about sweet spirits. I mean, Sylvester Stallone's mom did, like, really unusual, I don't even wanna say, but I will, like, butt prints. I didn't do them. You can look that up. But things that were connected to their wisdom traditions and trying to, like, divine the cosmos. And so I just, like, thought about that, and this "I am a magnificent woman" just came out of, like, an ancient cry for, we're here to birth new worlds. We are here as women to holistically, with our gestalt that's random and ugly and bleeding and unbelievably uplifting when we come together, nourishment, all of the things that the woman paradigm, however you wanna look at it, represents. And so I I s I guess I birthed this "I am a magnificent woman," like, it's 10 minutes of stanzas that are just like, I'll talk I mean, I don't I haven't thought about it in a while, but super deep. And then I thought, gosh, I got something out of my system, which is women have given birth to the entire population.
Mhm.
And so how can we how can we how can we put our men folk into the dialogue? And so that's what the 100 Days of Love kind of was, that reconnection to the energy of a balanced. And obviously there's much dialogue and, there's constructs of calling woman man, all of the things that we're living in as we decode the universe. But it really felt important to me to reach out with daily loving writing, stories, activism. What are we doing to be a part of each other's lives? How are we going, hey, partner, husband, boyfriend, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing. You have eyeballs. Here's the home. Do your own labor. So, how do we engage that in a loving way? How do we reframe the loving story that it isn't woman's work? Women are here to birth new universes. And so we don't necessarily have the time to do all the laundry, to make sure that the because we got shit to do. So that
Uh-huh.
so that was the 100 days of like, let's get fiery. Let's impact each other. Let's tell each other, you know what, you can say, gosh, maybe you'll make the plans for what we're doing. I don't need to make a choice. I'll show up. Don't let me do your labor anymore. And it's been pretty effective.
Do you have a day or two you can read from the book for our audience?
I would have to step away and grab the book, unfortunately. So I'm a little. I could look something up, I guess, but what we can keep talking and I'll find it, and then
Okay. Okay, I'll ask another question while you're looking for that. As an author and a filmmaker, what would you say is the hardest thing you've ever had to bring into existence?
the hardest thing about bringing something that never existed, finding the truth in this like completely constructed storytelling. Um, I feel like it was believing in exactly who needed to pull off the jobs. So I think the belief in talent, who people said, nah, they shouldn't do it. We should cast somebody else. You know what? They're not good enough to do the set design because their crew isn't, up to, they haven't had the experience crewing up. And just saying, you know what? We want to use them. We want to grow in this way that's collective, that's allows people to grow, that gives people opportunities to thrive and to shift conversations. So I always go back to kind of the first movie that I put together, and it's I don't. It just happens to be because it's also rooted in the Rat Pack and my dad and that kind of stuff. But it's like we had the opportunity to do swingers when I was a kid or whatever. When I first came to town, I was like 21 and managing actors and directors, and I just couple of young guys, super funny. We were drawn to Vegas because my dad was in there. Louis Prima and was dead, but Keely Smith had her partner, Sammy Terra, was still performing in Las Vegas. And so we had a friend of ours, my younger brother was dating or whatever, that worked for Entertainment Tonight for like 20 years. And so she was like, hey, do you guys want to come to Vegas? And we're going to have this big Sinatra night. And like Sinatra's performing at the Riviera, whatever. And so I just remember gathering all my little like all my kids or whatever, and we're like, "Let's go to Vegas." And so Swingers was this like collaborative, long journey into existence, and so that's kind of where I go when I think about like that was believing in yourself, not having enough money to do anything, but still like, oh, we're still like boss, we're still driving around, we're still able to like put gas in our car, and so we could drive where we needed to go. And then just keeping on, and just having that fun moment where people finally go. And even my best friend, she had a party she could go to Sandra Bullock's house, and we had our first screening of the film. And she chose to go to Sandra Bullock's house, and I don't deny her that because Matt McConaughey was there, whatever. But you have these moments in life where you go, she didn't show up, she missed out. And so we had a long talk about that, and we're friends to this day, like 30 years later. We are buddies because we talked about, do you think, I mean, Sandra Bullock's like important, but who's more important? Your best friend.
Friendship.
Your
Friendship.
best friend. So,
Yeah.
next time you can make a different decision. And she did. So I really respect the process. And that was kind of a tough, I went through a lot, ups and downs, like trying to establish what friendship means in the collaborative relationship of making a movie, which brings out everyone's egos and hopes and dreams and, desires to fulfill their passions.
What three words best describe the work of love as a narrative shifter? And also, on a like note, in looking at your work, what do you see as your role in changing the narrative and building a new system of storytelling for all media, entertainment, and technology?
That's a great question. The three things I'm infusing in the media landscape, the media entertainment tech, not MET, as they call it, the media entertainment tech. I'm seeding the collaborations with the artistry, with the folks that are doing the storytelling. So seeding is one of the key elements of this. Obviously, the idea of an all systems love production process where we shift back, and there's a few examples of this which I'll give after I give the third word, but the third word is harvest. So the three elements for me of this new narrative, we're seeding ideas, possibilities, a renaissance of thought that really is about our community, our stories being stories that are wonderful, loving, lit up stories. So seeding, loving, and then this idea of harvesting. So I am connecting to this lands of love. The idea that our stories can be loving, they can be connected, they can be rooted, and they can be a part of an ecosystem that drives us to be connected, harmonious, loving participants in a world where we have our dark days and we ask for what we need, and we're able to tell stories that actually put us on a timeline that is loving, that is peaceful, and that allows for the earth to return to the nutrients in the soil and its rightful birth opportunity of earth magic and miracles. I mean, I don't want to be too like fluffy, but I do love the earth magic and miracles as far as the infusion of what I'm doing. So that's how I'm taking my critical mass of individuals who are committed to this idea of more love, more connection, community driven actions that tell the stories that we are here to tell. I mean, what better thing can you do than offer a space where folks can discover who they are at the deepest level and then also share those stories because they're here to tell their story. We heal through telling our stories. And so the more stories that we tell that are the ways that we heal. So it's a pretty easy, I mean, seed, love, and harvest. And the harvests are always different. I'm not talking about like being connected to an idea that's like, because ideas change with our thoughts. So the process for me is just reminding folks that they can change their mind and they can tell a
Mm,
different story.
mm. I
Mm,
love
wow.
that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Are there other three words too? You said feed, love, and harvest, and
Seed.
then are more. Ah,
Seed,
Seed.
love, and harvest.
Seed. That's better. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you take
um,
us a little bit through your creative process also? Where do you draw inspiration from, and how are you able to innovate in your work?
Well, this is going to sound interesting, but I guess it's all connected to the intuition. I had a near-death experience, so I died and then came back, and
what
so
happened?
you just drown. I drowned, and then somebody revived me. But so you have this clair. I have clairaudience. Other people have clairsentient. I mean, there's a million ways that we're feeling through this existence. So one of the tools I've had access to is clairaudience. So I am able to hear uh, from helpful ancestors, from industry. Like I used to hear from Hitchcock or whatever at one point, and then I was like, "Is that really Hitchcock, or is this just a joke?" But
Mhm.
you just kind of go. My process is listening, deep, deep listening. It is being present. It is allowing for the collaboration. And this is why the entertainment business, technology, storytelling, California, the sunlight that drew me here is the reason I am participating in this All Systems Love content hub or collection of loving stories or shifting points of view and organizing deeply with people who are committed to sharing vulnerable, to lensing things that we haven't seen in the media landscape for the past 100 years. So for me, my work is curating wonderful artists who are absolutely in touch with biophilia, bringing it back to the first part of our conversation, the love of all living things. My action does have a reaction. My telling a story does impact, and it doesn't have to impact the world, but that ripple effect uh, does reach areas that you can't even imagine. And so that's the after I take a nap, that's my number one, methodology.
How
Like
many
sleep.
naps a day do you take?
I actually have I've been working the nap ministry for 3 years. So I now actually take less naps because I'm not as tired as I was when I started.
You
And I
have more
also
passion and love.
I've got focus on listening. I take a nap and then I hear the solution, and that's the creative process that I'm attempting to, co-create with folks. And also, it there's a beautiful story. I mean, I Sidney Poitier passed away, within this past year, and Joanne, his wife, and there's several of my friends who were involved with him, and you know, when he started, there were no they did not pay Black people. It was like, we don't want to, we'll pay them pennies, pennies, pennies. And there was a producer, Walter Mirisch, who said, you know what, studio, pay him nothing. But you know what, if he's good, if the movie's good, he should participate in the profits. And so Walter Mirisch took an opportunity that was crap and allowed for this powerhouse of a performer who I grew up with that Channel 9. I was, New York station, and all the Sidney Poitier movies were just like boom in your face. You're like, that's that's acting, for me, like that's acting, which you don't even know as a kid, but just to hear that didn't get he was able to participate in the profits of his talents. And many producers didn't do what they didn't do that. And, there's ways we can shift the narrative. There's ways that we can take negatives and make them about thriving. And that's the dialogue that comes from a governance that isn't top down, that is about like, let's believe in the seed to blossom and let's allow that harvest to be shared. And those are the stories, those are the economic models, the payment models. There's a lot of things in doing an all systems love model, or trying to do it, that you have to reconsider everything you've ever done and be comfortable with that. And the Nat Ministry has helped me do that.
Oh, that's great. Well, what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
That there's more love than there is fear. And we have 10,000 thoughts a day. And it is a reality that you're creating if you don't just consider the possibility that you can infuse more love into the work you do, into the daily routines that really are our existence. And I know that I did get the piece of the book that I guess I wanted to share, the Mel's Love Land,
Good.
consider the possibilities, the 100 days. And it's the definition of these lands of love. And so Loveland isn't a place you can go to on a map. It is an experience of yourself within, an experience of deep and abiding peace of mind, body, and spirit, a place where you can wake up in full joy of your being and fully participate in every process of your life, enraptured in the sacredness of your truest home, that space where love and forgiveness meets an open heart, becoming a soulful force of nature. And love has come to any land long barren, nourishing, filling up dried riverbeds of being and flowing through once rough terrains, now fully divine, soulful, beating, reanimating, roots growing, absorbing till sated, becoming love itself through ever rushing pathways of this human experience, floating our spirit ever higher toward the peace of heaven on earth. And so that was my kind of definition of what Loveland was. And we're here to really fully embrace lands of love and the experience of being connected with each other in powerful, harmonious ways. So I'm super grateful. Thank you both. This has been, more loving than I had anticipated, but we are love here on
Yes, we
this
are.
Magic February.
And Late
I'm
Boomers
so moved
endorses
and
love.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm
damn.
so moved and inspired. Thank you so much. And today, our guest on Late Boomers has been Melanie Lutz, filmmaker, writer, and love activist and napping expert.
So
Be a part of the Loving Story movement and reach out to Melanie at melsloveland.com and check out her latest documentary series, Mel's Loveland, What If All Our Thoughts Were Loving? And buy her books from any online or brick and mortar bookstore.
And we want to remind our listeners that we now have a new YouTube channel, the Late Boomers Podcast. Don't be confused by our competitors, the Late Bloomers. We are booming, boom, boom, boom. And we are recording, we're recording this episode for Valentine's Day. So you can watch it on YouTube or listen to its message of love 365 days a year. And please contact us on our website, lateboomers.biz, B-I-Z, and on Instagram at Late Boomers, at I am Kathy Worthington, and at I am Mary Elkins. We hope you are finding joy and inspiration and love in our podcasts, and that you will subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. Thanks again, Mel.
You're welcome. Thank you too so much.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.